Hi fairies, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Phoebe. It's so nice to have you here. I hope you stay a while. Today we are going to be doing our March reading wrap up. Okay, I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of March and sharing my thoughts, opinions and ratings. So let us get right into it. So I read 10 books this month. I read 5 fantasies, 3 romance books, 1 mystery and 1 fiction, a literary fiction. Let's talk about these books. The first 3 books I read in the month of March, I actually read in my March 24-hour readathon. I decided every month that I would film at least 1 readathon. So if you would like really in-depth thoughts and opinions about these books, definitely go check that video out because I really went into it there. So I will not be doing that right now. But the first book is Legendborn. This is a fantasy. This is actually a fantasy written by a black woman about a black girl. We have Bree. She is a young girl whose mother went to this particular school, okay, and because her mom went to this school, she also really wanted to go to this school, but her mom was just so against her going to this school that she applied without telling her mom. And when she got accepted and she finally told her mom was like really mad at her. They had an argument, it was a whole thing, and that same day her mom was like, okay, we'll talk about it later in the day, and she went out and unfortunately got into an accident and died. So we have Bree grappling with the fact that her mom not only died but also died, right after an argument that they had, okay, and they left off on like bad terms. So yeah, Bree ends up deciding to actually go to this school. A lot of things happen. She finds out that there's this culty high society type of situation with elites that try to protect other humans from demons and things like that, and the magic system is so interesting because it involves King Arthur and Sword and Stone. Like, it's just so interesting, and I genuinely really loved and enjoyed this book. I thought it was written so beautifully. I really enjoyed the writing, I enjoyed the plot. The pacing was a bit off at some points, but it was ultimately quite fast-paced. Like, a lot kept happening and continued to happen. And yeah, we just watched Bree kind of go through all these things happening. There's also like a romance situation, almost a love triangle type of situation, and it was just ultimately very much fun. I gave this book 4.25 stars because, like I said, I really did enjoy it, but it was missing or lacking in some points for me. But it was a very good book. I would definitely recommend. And then I read Ruthlessvows by Rebecca Ross. This is the second book in the Divine Rivals duology. Basically, this duology follows Kit and Iris. They start as, workplace rivals, as the name implies. Iris is this girl from a poor family who had to drop out of school because she couldn't afford to go anymore when her brother decided to go off to fight in the war for the gods, and left her with her mom, who is basically a deadbeat and wasn't doing anything for her. And then she decided to join this publishing house because she's a very avid writer. She loves writing. She's very passionate about it. She joined this publishing house and was vying for this position of columnist, and so was Kit, who is from a very well-off family. He was in the beginning quite stuck up, and we just watched them kind of come together. And this book also involves like a very interesting magic system with letters. With these typewriters that they both have, they like communicate with each other without even knowing that it was them that they were talking to, and they just like build this whole beautiful love story and romance. And honestly, I just found the first book so freaking beautiful and interesting. I gave the first book 5 stars, but I gave this book 4 stars because first of all, it was quite slow in the beginning and it just did not reach the heights that the first book did. But ultimately, I love this duology. It was beautifully written and I would definitely recommend. And then I read Throne by Sarah Cox. This is a literary fiction that follows a group of women living in this estate as they come together to start a pottery class, and they just build friendships with each other, but also we see them navigating their personal lives. Like, some people are navigating their marriages, their relationship with their children, their family lives, and it's just very, very interesting, and it was interesting to watch all of that unfold. Obviously, it's a fiction, so it was quite slow at some points, especially at the beginning, but I ultimately really enjoyed it for what it was. I give it 3.75 stars and I will recommend. So these next 2 books are the only books I read in March that I did not film anything about. The first one is Noragoesoffscript by Annabelle Monaghan. This is my second Annabelle Monaghan book, and yeah, just like the first one, I did not really enjoy it. I think Annabelle's main problem is that she likes writing shorter stories, but it means that the books end up feeling not as fleshed out as they should be, okay? They just feel half-baked, rushed, and just ultimately annoying. So yeah, this book is basically about a woman whose husband for some reason one day just ups and leaves her with her children. He barely even comes to visit the children, and obviously she's grappling with that. She is a scriptwriter, and so she writes a script based on this thing that happened in her life, and it gets picked up. These people come to film in her house because she has a very beautiful house that is so like idyllic, like it's very important to the story essentially. And so we have the male main character of the film that is to be made, and somehow they just build a relationship with each other, and honestly it just wasn't the best thing ever in my opinion. Generally I'm not the biggest fan of romance, contemporary romance books, but this one just felt too annoying, too half-baked, too rushed. Like I did not even understand anything that was happening. It just felt very cringe, and it just wasn't very good in my opinion. I want to read an actually good Annabelle Monaghan book, and I will try to read at least one more of her books before I completely write her off, but yeah, this one just wasn't the best thing ever. I gave it 2.75 stars, which is not a bad rating, just wasn't that good. And then I read The Hunger Games, the first book by Susan Collins. This is a dystopian fantasy. Honestly, if you don't know The Hunger Games by now, I don't know what to tell you. I don't even know how to explain it without spoiling it, but basically, yeah, it's dystopian. We have people basically fighting for their lives in these games that you have to enter when you get of age. Like, it's a whole thing. Again, I don't know how to explain without spoiling it, but I had watched literally all the movies at least twice, and I wasn't even going to read any of the books until they announced the Sunrise on the Reaping, the book and the movie, and I was like, okay, I really need to get on my grind. So I will be filming a reading vlog, reading all of the Hunger Games books, so stay tuned for that. But this one I thought was a really nice book. It didn't quite hit as hard as it should because, like I said, I have watched literally all of the movies already. I know basically the plot, like generally, but this obviously gave more insight. It was more informative, more descriptive, and I quite enjoyed it, so I gave it 4 stars. The next 5 books I actually read in a reading vlog that is coming out hopefully this Saturday, so stay tuned for that. It was a vlog where I read only new releases for 24 hours, and it was quite fun. I read 5 books, so very much fun. The first book I read was Rebelwitch by Kristen Sicarelli. This is like my most anticipated read of 2025. It is the second book in the Crimson Moth duology. I read the first book last year. I gave it 5 stars. I keep raving about it. It was so freaking good in my opinion, and going into this book I had high hopes, okay, and I think maybe that was the downfall. Not downfall per se, because I did not give it a bad rating whatsoever, but I just expected way more. Okay, in this duology we follow Rune and Gideon. Rune is a witch in a world where witches are basically outlawed. Anybody that is found to be a witch will actually be arrested and killed, hung or burnt. So obviously she is like in hiding. She is posing as this rich socialite, this dumb, socialite that is just working the court, but undercover she is actually the Crimson Moth, this like vigilante that helps to save witches and transports them out of this kingdom to places where they are actually not in danger. And she decides when she comes of age to get married that she is going to marry somebody that will somehow be able to help her in her activities, somebody that she can get information about where witches are kept, how to enter high security prisons. And she decides to go for Gideon, who is actually the male main character and is a witch hunter. He is actually like head witch hunter, like the general, something like that, and is actually also suspecting her of being the Crimson Moth because they have been looking for this Crimson Moth who is just getting witches out of the country. So he decides to play into it just so he can find out if she is the Crimson Moth, and obviously they fall in love. The first book left on like a cliffhanger. I even cried at the end of it, and I was so excited for this book, and it was good, but it just felt a little too romance heavy. And look, I love these characters, I love the romance, I ate it up at the end of the day, but I just feel like that caused the plot to not really have as much of an impact as it should have had. Okay, this is essentially a very high stakes situation, or it should have been a high stakes situation, and it just did not feel as high stakes as it should have. Ultimately, I thought it was a good book, but just not as good as the first one, so I gave it 4 stars. And then I read therosebargain. I actually did not know much about this book before I went into it. I just saw, you know, Sarah Caroli talk about it in her most anticipated reads of 2025 video, and I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. It is basically a regency fantasy. We are basically in this world where the fairy queen has made her way into the human world and has somehow become the queen of Regency England, okay? And of course, every year we have seasons where all the girls that are of age will present themselves to men that would want to marry them. And when you are presenting yourself, you have to make a bargain with the queen, you know, for something that would aid your prospects in getting married. So like, think, I want long luscious hair and I will give you my ability to taste sweet things, you know, stuff like that. And this particular year, the queen has announced that her son is actually going to be looking for a bride. So we have like 24 people that want to get this prince to marry them, and obviously it's cut down to 6 in the end. And we have our main character Ivy, who joins this whole thing so that the prince can marry her, because she was part of a not poor family, but her family was kind of disgraced when something happened with her sister that was quite scandalous. People kind of outcasted them, and yeah, she's just trying to save her family's name and face, and she joins this whole contest to win the prince's hand in marriage. And they have to undergo these games and these perilous situations, and it was actually very, very interesting. I liked the whole Hunger Games type of situation that we had mixed with Bridgerton. Like, I love Regency fantasies and Regency books in general, so it was really up my alley. I do feel that it was quite like weirdly paced, and also the ending was just very rushed and confusing, and while it was shocking, it didn't make too much sense for me. So ultimately I thought it was a good book. I cannot wait for the second book. I'm not sure if it's a duology or a series in general, but I can't wait for the next book, and I gave this book 3.75 stars. Then I read Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This is a contemporary romance, and I actually only read this book because I wanted to read Out of the Woods for my new releases video. But yeah, I started it like last week or last 2 weeks, and I finished it in that video. It's basically about Win and Bo. Win from birth was born with like this disability where her hand was underdeveloped, and she has had to live with that like her entire life. And then we have Bo, who actually had all his limbs from birth, but because he got cancer, his leg had to be decapitated. And so we have these two people with limb difficulties basically fall in love because they met at a Halloween party. They had a one-night stand, and turns out that Wayne fell pregnant. So they are walking through this whole pregnancy together. I thought it was a cute book. It was okay for what it was. The writing was just, it was good, but it was just okay, to be honest. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of contemporary romance, but this was one of the better contemporary romances that I have read. So I gave it 3 stars because it was good, just wasn't anything special in my opinion, and it was quite cheesy and corny. Then I read A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. This is a mystery, magical realism, supernatural type of book, psychological fiction. I don't know per se, but it's definitely very mystery. We have our main character James, whose brother is killed. His name is Johnny, and you know, something just seems off. She's like, this doesn't seem right, something is wrong here. And so she decides to come back to their hometown that she actually left 20 years ago after something bad happened. And yeah, she's just trying to figure out what actually happened to her brother. But obviously there are other things that unfold, other things that are revealed. There's also this like romance situation with, you know, her childhood best friend. And yeah, it was a good book. I quite enjoyed the writing. Like, I loved the writing. The writing was my favorite part. Adrienne Young's writing was just something that I did not expect to resonate with as much as I did, and I cannot wait to dive into more of her discography. But I thought the plot was lacking in some areas. Maybe it felt a little too rushed at the end and quite slow in the beginning. And yeah, ultimately I thought it was a good book, and like I said, I can't wait to get into more of Young's books, but I gave it 4 stars. Finally, I read Out of the Woods by Hannah Young. This is the second book in this Out Interconnected series. This basically follows Sarah and Caleb, the best friends from the first book, and honestly, when I saw them in the first book, I really liked them because I thought they had so much personality. They were so fun, and I was really excited to get into this book because I wanted to see just what it was about. And this book basically follows them struggling with their marriage and trying to fix that. Okay, they had been dating since high school sweethearts, and they got married like a while ago, and obviously when things like that happen, you tend to see the people just not really know who they are, struggle with finding themselves outside of this relationship, outside of this marriage, and that is basically the situation that we have here. And so they go on this like camping trip in order to fix their marriage, and obviously things happen. It's quite funny, I guess, but it just wasn't the best thing ever. Again, contemporary romance, not my thing. So I gave it 3 stars because it was okay, just nothing special. So yeah, those are all the books I read in the month of March. That brings us to the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means the world to me. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram if you want to be book besties or just besties in general. I would really love that. But for now, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.